session, please welcome Iravati Karnik, a writer, director, translator, and actor. She worked extensively with the theatre group Avishkar and has acted in, translated, and directed several plays. Her own scripts include Sex, Morality, and Censorship, The A Casting, which premiered in Berlin, Satellite City, Gasha, and C Sharp, C Blunt, which was awarded the Best Original Script at Mahindra Excellence in Theatre Awards. Her Marathi plays include Teej Di Diwali, amongst others. She has been awarded the Ustad Bismillah Khan Yuva Puraskar, Vinod Doshi Fellowship, and Kathakar Shantaram Puraskar, and is a visiting faculty at the Drama School, Mumbai. Please join me in giving her a huge round of applause. Vaibhav Abhnave is an independent filmmaker. His first feature, Mon Rang, 2013, was based on the works of Mahesh Elkunchwar and premiered at 15th Mumbai International Film Festival in India, Gold Competition. He is pursuing doctorate in international politics at Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He has written, directed, and acted in Marathi theatre and teaches courses in performance studies, documentary filmmaking, and international politics. Please give him a huge round of applause. Dharmakirti Sumant is one of the foremost playwrights of the new Marathi experimental theatre. He has been awarded with the Sahitya Academy Youth Award for his book Pani. He received the Jayavant Dalvi Award, was also the recipient of Vinod Doshi Fellowship for his writings in 2009. Some of his other major plays include Logging Out, Something Stupid Like I Love You, Amhala Amche, among several others. Please join me in welcoming him. Makaran Sathe, an architect by profession, has been writing plays, novels, articles, and theatre history in Marathi for the last 3 decades. His plays have been performed in many national and international festivals. He has also directed some of his plays. His novels and plays have been translated and published in many languages like Kannada, Hindi, Urdu, English, French, and Russian. He is on the panel of selectors for the Pune International Film Festival. His 3-volume socio-political history of Marathi theatre was published in Marathi in 2011 and later in English by Oxford University Press. Please join us in extending him a very, very warm welcome.
And thank you, Samanvay, for inviting all of us here. All of us nearly belong to experimental theatre in Marathi. That is, in a sense, valid for 2 reasons at this moment. One, for the theme of the seminar, which is inside, outside, or insider, outsider. Because any serious experimentation or experimenter is inside as well as outside in his profession, in his community, the politics that he does. So for that, it is very valid that all of us belong to experimental theatre. The other is slightly more on lighter note, that all experimental theatre people are quite used to so much audience only. Many a times there are more number of actors than number of audience. So that is not very there, though they are quite famous and popular writers. I am not trying to underrate them. But I mean, they are used to these conditions also. All of them are very young. They are the reason why Marathi theatre, even to today, is very vibrant. One of very rare occasions, even on national level, or I may dare say, even on international level. Theatre is not exactly going through its golden period. These are the people, torchbearers in these dark ages for theatre. I would not take more time. I would straight away invite Vaibhav Abhnave, who is sort of more theoretician than writer, and so I will invite him first he will try, I suppose, when we discussed this, he told me that he will try to kind of locate, historically place the journey of Marathi theatre, also related to the theme of the seminar. And Vaibhav.
There's already introduced that I'll be speaking more as an outsider than as an insider. So I'll be dividing my presentation in two parts. And the first part, I'll be speaking more as a student of international politics. And as a student of international politics, one is constantly confronted with this question of inside and outside at every juncture. So in the first part, I'll be looking at the relationship between region, nation, and the world, how it has unfolded in South Asian, in Indian case. And then I'll be making few observations about Marathi theatre in the second part. Though it's not a historical overview of Marathi theatre per se, but what is the relation between inside, outside, and how it has unfolded and has impacted Marathi theatre. So speaking in a generalized terms in the context of India, the relationship between region, nation, and world can be roughly divided into three phases. In the pre-colonial period, especially during the last phase of the anti-colonial struggle, during the interwar period, the relationship between the region and the emerging nation was in flux. The emerging nation was being claimed from various regional vantage points simultaneously. Some regions, like Hindi heartland, Marathi-speaking region, Bengal, had stronger claims over the emerging contours of the yet-to-be nation than others. Also, regions had almost autonomous access to the world outside, to the contested realm of the international, the only mediation being the British Empire. And it was also the period in which the historical, cultural, political, and linguistic consciousness of regions was being consolidated, differentiated, and mobilized through simultaneous engagement with the world outside, and also through the contesting claims over the emerging nation. And yet the regions in this period were far from claiming stable, homogeneous, exclusive, and territorial identities for themselves. The regions contained heterogeneous, open-ended, cosmopolitan, and creative energies, impulses, sensibilities, which on the one hand shaped the imagination of the emerging nation, while on the other hand exceeded any national bracketing. Now, in the immediate aftermath of independence, the nation took over as the master category. Regions became constituent parts of this new whole, named nation, and this new unified whole claimed all the diversity to itself, but the regions were imagined in unitary, homogeneous terms. The nation, acting through the state, parceled, reorganized, and stabilized these regional energies, impulses, sensibilities into federal administrative units. These units were founded upon distinct socio-cultural and linguistic identities, and the distinctness of these homogenized units was valued and patronized as long as it contributed to the diversity of the nation in a docile manner. Now, those regions which could not be entirely disciplined in this manner for various historical geopolitical reasons were either coerced, neutralized, paternalized, or exoticized in the service of the diversity of the nation. It was also the period when the outside world too was parceled between two rival blocs, and the regions could access this polarized world only through the gateway of the sovereign territorial nation state. Now, gradually, when the political coherence of this hegemonic nation started crumbling, the region started bargaining, blackmailing, threatening for more power, autonomy, resources, and in this process, the boundaries of the regions got further crystallized as identities defined in sharp, mutually exclusive, and majoritarian terms. On the other hand, the supposedly plural, diverse nation was itself being challenged and reimagined in overtly unitarist, exclusivist, and majoritarian terms. In this reimagined nation, there was no longer even an attempt to contain and accommodate the distinctness of the regions in the lip service of its own supposed diversity. In fact, the assertive regions as well as the reimagined nation both mirrored each other in terms of turning into crystallized, inward-looking and intolerant identities with clearly defined insiders and outsiders. Now, simultaneously, the increasing thirst of the global capital has been continuously bypassing the gateway of the sovereign nation state, and the regions are being directly plugged into the dense multilinear worldwide web through which not only the hypermobile capital but also goods, services, information, labor circulates. Now, these incessant flows, coupled with a regime of intolerance, have fragmented the socio-cultural fabric of the regions through deepening the vertical and horizontal divides in politico-economic terms. Though the regions have significantly enhanced global connectivity in this period, this hyperconnectivity is routed through these deep divides and crystallized identities, and also reinforces those divides and identities at the same time, marking permanent winners and losers, insiders and outsiders. Now, in the second part, I'll turn to Marathi theatre and first make a few general observations about the practice of what is identified as Marathi theatre, and would like to briefly discuss the changing nature of the institution and the figure of playwright. Now, in the last phase, which we just discussed, the practice of Marathi theatre has been sharply polarized between urban metropolitan and provincial nor urban spaces. The theatre movements such as the working class theatre, Dalit theatre are virtually non-existent. The so-called surviving activist propagandist theatre is resorting to a kind of sentimental, complacent populism. Even the space for the so-called urban middle class, upper caste, experimental / amateur / non-commercial theatre is increasingly marginalized, and this theatre struggles to find an aesthetic, formal connect outside of the urban centers. There is an inflation of the intercollegiate theatre with the hyper-enthusiasm, and it continues to feed into the urban theatre activity, both commercial as well as non-commercial. But very few of these young theatre enthusiasts manage to sustain serious interest in theatre activity in the long run. The myth of the so-called lost golden age of Marathi experimental theatre continues to cast its pale shadow on the young imagination and induces a false sense of nostalgia now and then. This induced nostalgia reinforces the inward-looking complacency of Marathi theatre. The regime of contemporaneity continues to polarize the theatre practice and discourse into socio-political and aesthetic, historico-material and spiritual, intellectual and experiential. Yet seen from outside, Marathi theatre still seems to be hyperactive, happening field. Now, in the context of these observations, I would like to turn to changing nature of the institution and the figure of playwright, which has been claimed to be the so-called creative epicenter of Marathi theatre. Now, in the midst of this fragmentation, marginalization, polarization, and complacency, the figure of playwright seems to be reinventing itself by turning into two seemingly opposite directions. One direction is venturing into the dark depths of history to return to the present with heightened awareness, and the other encountering the twilight of the unfolding present to invent futures. The first direction I called as playwright / historian. Playwright / historian seems to be turning towards the long socio-political history of Marathi theatre spanning 150 years in order to make sense of the genealogies of the fragmented present, in order to reconstruct oneself through the scattered pieces of identities, in order to confront the question, who am I? What am I made up of? This historical self-reflection is employed to invent new metaphors, narrative frames, to cognize, to analyze, to dissect, to reassemble and to reclaim the fragmented present, not as a rupture, but as a continuation of layers of history. This historical self-reflection takes a sociological, discursive, and intellectual path to penetrate through the unfathomable vanishing present. The historical sociological method is employed to anchor oneself into one's location, to access the contemporaneity as an essentially embedded, located, contextual experience, and not as a disembodied universal one, in order to synthesize the search for content with the search for form, the search for narrative with the search for frame, the search for realities with the search for metaphor. This complex, multi-layered historical consciousness attempts to work through the trappings of facile polarities to break through crystallized identities of region, nation, and the world. The other direction in which the figure of playwright seems to be going is the twilight of the unfolding present. Here the playwright is attempting to decenter oneself as an institution and remake oneself as one of the collaborators in making theater, or rather devising performance. Performance here is conceived as an interplay of bodies, sounds, images, and not a vehicle to communicate the playwright's words. Here the attempt is to encounter and engage with the unfolding present at visceral, experiential level. Playwright as collaborator is attempting to co-invent new forms, possibilities, languages, spaces, modes, as well as media of theatrical expression, by constantly stretching its own limits. In this process, the playwright as a collaborator is consciously, unconsciously, intentionally, unintentionally taking the risks of atomized, individualist, indulgent ahistoricity, or a certain empty formalism. Now, the tension between the two directions raises important questions about dealing with the contemporary. How does one deal with the tension between discursive and the experiential while encountering the contemporary? How does one reimagine culture not as a bounded entity or as a marker of identity, but as a distinct, differentiated, yet open-ended and intensive dimension of existence, which can remake the boundaries between self and other, inside and outside, region, nation, and the world? Thank you.
Background in a theoretical way. I would also like to add here in the sense that this kind of insider-outsider is, in my opinion, not a bipolarity anymore in India. In fact, it has not been for a long time now. In fact, since India encountered the so-called project of modernity of Europe through the British to start with, and after 1990s with globalization, the fragmentation is so strong that what is inside of what and what is outside of what is not exactly a bipolar anymore. India is living in many times at the same time, from the Adivasis to the postmodern. As we all know, there are even many modernities, not a singular modernity at all. So when we talk about inside and outside, we should remember that it is not bipolar anymore. It is far too complex, far multilinear, multidimensional. In this way, or in this world, theater practice has also become extremely multilinear. Iravati Karnik here, who faces this multipolarity or multi-dimensions because she is not only a writer, she is also a director and a wonderful actor. Not only that, she is not limited to Marathi theater. She writes in Marathi, of course, but she also writes in English. She is part of kind of globalized theater world. In this world, even what is contemporary has become very complex. There is no singular definition of contemporary. We say contemporary art, we say contemporary literature, but it is impossible to define it. It is really fragmented. It depends on the location. It depends on the space in which one is operating. So she moves in different spaces. I would now invite Iravati to give her own brief.
Hi. To begin with, I think it's important that I set the tone of my presentation right. I want to speak not as an academic or a theoretician, but purely from the personal point of view of a practitioner. When asked what I do, I find that my answer never fails to include the fact that I am a Marathi playwright. And yet, looking back at my work over the last 5 years or so, it turns out that I have written one Marathi play, and it has been a mainstream one. There have been 3 plays in Hindi, one in English that was later translated into German, one that stayed in English, and one that was written in Hindi and English. And yet I maintain that I am a Marathi playwright. I want to take this opportunity to explore what that really means and what working with these multiple languages has done to my understanding of it. I want to reflect upon my journey towards multilingualism in theatre making. As a playwright, and especially as a collaborator, I am often faced with the following questions that seem pertinent to this conversation. 1, what is the difference between tradition and identity? And 2, do I, as a theatre maker who has written about Kashmir and ethnic stereotyping and feminism and the international food crisis, feel compelled to prove my Marathiness in the world? The first question is tricky. What is the difference? And more importantly, how does one wear these 2 costumes at the same time without one looking like the other? I want to approach these questions through certain moments in my life when I have become acutely aware of the position and politics of language. I've always had a somewhat complicated relationship with language. I was raised in a family of left-leaning liberal Marathi activists, journalists, writers. So conversations and arguments about Marathi writers and writing were like a background track. I was studying in an English medium school though. But the only time we ever used the English language was while answering exam papers. At all other times, teachers and students spoke to each other in Marathi, occasionally in Hindi. I was considered a bright student. I was confident, enjoyed studying. But to me, English was the language of textbooks, and consequently the language of knowledge. It seemed as though one used Marathi to discuss feelings and thoughts, Hindi to share information, and English for the exchange of knowledge. That was my first relationship with English. At the age of 11, I went to live in a boarding school called Rishi Valley. It was a Krishnamurti Foundation school. Students were encouraged to speak their mind, to question authority. But we were expected to speak in English 24 hours of the day. And for the first time in my life, I felt unsure and lost. I had things to say, but couldn't formulate a sentence in time to say them. I was in a state of constant uncertainty. I was unhappy. The other thing was that I was suddenly surrounded by kids who by the age of 10 had traveled to at least 3 countries. Many were NRIs, many others not even Indian. I came from a typical middle-class family. I got new clothes stitched twice a year. If it happened a 3rd time, I was thrilled. I did not know names like Nike and Mescos. The snacks I brought were homemade and did not come in packets with Arabic writing on them. And I did not watch Santa Barbara or MTV. The kids were mostly kind and culture sensitive and took me in, no questions asked. I felt grateful, and it only made me more desperate to belong. For the first few years, I did not invite any friends to our tiny home situated on an embarrassingly garbage-infested lane. I felt like an outsider for my lack of language. So that was what my relationship with English grew into. It was something I felt forced to aspire to. A wise house parent advised that the only way out was to read, to familiarize myself with the language. So I did. I read everything I got my hands on. But I remember vividly that it was plays that I found most accessible. There was something about the form that seemed to make sense. Incidentally, when I submitted my first Marathi play to the censor board, and it went to the playwright Shafat Khan to be read, he called me up to tell me that he was somewhat bemused with my use of language. It was Marathi all right, but many a times the syntax seemed not Marathi enough. Perhaps that early reading has something to do with it. We had a lot of exposure to theatre in school. I remember doing a Chinese play called The Emperor's Nightingale, an Egyptian one called The Mask of Anubis. A delightful man named Jerry came down from Canada and did a play with us called The Demon Headmaster. They were all great fun. I thoroughly enjoyed being a part of them. But the moment of realization came when I was cast in a play called Prayashchit, based on the story by the same name by Munshi Premchand. It didn't strike me when I began learning the lines, but when I started to say them out loud, something seemed to give way. There was a tremendous sense of relief, of liberation. It was so overwhelming that the sensation took up a small but permanent corner inside me. It struck me that it wasn't my mother tongue I was speaking, and yet the sense of rootedness I felt was distinct. So without having gone about it consciously, I realized that I already had an emotional relationship with Hindi. The next time I was faced with the issue was language was in college. In Sir J.J. School of Fine Art, I had a very different set of peers. They were mostly from non-academic, lower class, often rural backgrounds. They had no exposure to the books I made references to, were even less aware of the anglicized culture that I had imbibed and made my own by now. And yet, it felt like my world. So I began to read Marathi this time. And the more I read, the more it felt like home. It was as though it simply released something that had already existed inside, that had been dormant so far. But it still didn't make me an insider. I was the anglicized girl who also knew Marathi books. It was at this stage that I met the writer-director Chetan Datar. I entered the world of Marathi experimental theatre, and I became aware of the daunting, ever-present force called tradition. The long-standing tradition of Marathi theatre itself, the tradition of Chhabil Das and Avishkar, the tradition of the Satyadev Dubey school. And it was gratifying and validating and enriching. So I went along. I was so overcome by the possibilities of the medium of theatre that language, and particularly Marathi, seemed like the natural choice. I kicked aside English quite happily. Writing in Marathi came surprisingly easily. It felt almost second nature. It felt like an organic next step to thinking. This was when my sense of being a Marathi playwright was emboldened, I think. For once, I did not feel like an outsider. I no longer felt like a hostage of the aspiration that English stood for. Until the time that Chetan passed away. And I was left in a bit of a lurch. In the void that he left behind, I realized that my pursuit of theatre so far had been largely driven by his vision, his worldview. It was time to at least start to think what mine could be. Yes, of course, the writing I had done was my own, but it was born of a certain surrender to the newfound reaffirmation of tradition. And it was time to challenge that. This was when I was reminded of being someone who had spent most of her life not growing up within one unshakable cultural universe. Being able to straddle multiple languages opened up the world for the baffling heterogeneity it was obviously made of. And I thought I would jump headlong into this world that seemed much more far-reaching than the one I was in. Other than the fact that the plays I mentioned earlier were not in Marathi, they have one more thing in common. They have all been collaborations. I did not approach the director with a ready script that actors had to learn. I developed the scripts through a rigorous research process and active participation by the director and sometimes actors. And that, I think, is an important aspect of the choice of language that they were written in. I was using theatre to expose myself to diverse people, diverse subjects, diverse cultures. And we had to find a common language to engage and express in. To give an example, the team for the play Gasha, which was about the aftermath of the Kashmiri Pandit exodus, consisted of an Assamese dramaturg, a Tamilian costume designer, a Punjabi scenographer, a Hyderabadi Muslim light designer, one Bihari and one Kashmiri actor, a Bengali director, and me, a Marathi writer. Yes, we did go a bit overboard with diversity on that one. The play was in Hindi. I won't be able to identify specifically the ways in which this diversity contributed to the play. But when I am told that apart from its subject, Gasha exhibits a subtle layer of amusing reflections on interregional acrimony, I know that's not a coincidence. At this stage, I came to equate multilingualism in theatre to opportunity. But on a little more sustained engagement with writing in other languages, I saw that it wasn't that straightforward. It came with its own challenges. Whether it was English or Hindi, I realized that different cultures construct arguments differently. One's way of composing an argument is informed by certain values and conventions, so it wasn't about simply switching gears and making up alternate words. It was about the need to understand how discourse is practiced in a new community. Adopting a language other than the one that has one lived with also implies a risk of a minimalistic tendency one ends up appropriating for being unaware of the intricacies and contradictions of a particular linguistic tradition. I worried over whether I was leading multiple linguistic lives, effectively breeding a hybridized thinking language that might make me a victim of the downfalls of reductionist writing. So while writing in multiple languages has revealed new worlds to me, taken me towards interesting co-practitioners and challenging audiences that would perhaps have remained out of my reach, it has also brought me back to thinking about my identity as a Marathi playwright. But I must confess something. I see today that unlike my predecessors, I not only have multiple traditions, but I also have multiple identities. The more I interact with other non-Marathi theatre practitioners, I find this peculiar understanding strengthened that perhaps there is no longer the need for a singular identity. Whether this is a useful or ultimately harmful belief for intellectual activity, for literature or storytelling, I don't know. I don't know if ultimately my work will add up to be shallow and thin and too spread out. But I do know that my world, unlike my predecessors in theatre, is inhabited by many more realities than theirs, although I know theirs was no less rich. As discourse becomes increasingly global, rhetorical, conventions cohabitate in interesting ways, changing the way we communicate. But then again, when I opt to write in another language, there's the gnawing feeling of being discourteous to one's mother tongue. And this brings me to my second question. Do I feel the need to exert my Marathiness? The answer could follow from the first as being a simple no, but I have to admit it's not that simple. And this is the great paradox, I think, of our time. That the more identities one develops, the more one becomes aware of a fixed one. And the fixed one is that of a certain Marathiness that one carries. I am aware of this. I am aware of this because when I work with other practitioners, they associate a certain history of theatre, of social reform with me. Even though circumstances are very different now, and the Marathi middle class's priorities and preoccupations have changed drastically, the association will remain. I'm also aware that I am at home in many places, but home for me is still a certain kind of light, a certain kind of crowd, a certain shape of spoken sounds, early consumption of a certain mythology. I'm aware that there's a duality here. The challenge lies in articulating in one's work the feeling of simultaneously being entrenched in and removed from one's linguistic upbringing. Perhaps universal themes and international appeal have to take a backseat as one focuses yet again on the reality of that which feels like one's own original language, but not without taking cognizance of the duality, not without accommodating the multidimensional, sometimes fractured sensibility one has acquired. The challenge lies in an earnest representation of one's perception of this world with all its subtleties and contradictions, and using language with rigor and inventiveness in a way that does most justice to that perception. But my experience so far has brought me to a very important question. We need to ask the reasons why, in a global context, a particular language is associated with power and prestige, and how it becomes imperative for trade, commerce, knowledge, and even for revolt, so that we are wary of becoming suspicious of using our own language towards these ends. Thank you.
That critical overview of the journey in relation to the theme of today's seminar. Now I will invite Dharmakirti Sumant. He is one of the youngest playwrights from Marathi. He is trying to deal with the complexity in a different way. He sticks to Marathi language, but he is trying to deal with different content in the sense he is trying to deal with getting rid of narrative itself. And he is trying to evolve different ways of dealing with the narrative as well as the form. Dharmakirti.
Thanks, Makaran. This introduction might help people understand what I will be saying. Through this excerpt, I want to explore how theatre as a parallel medium and Marathi as a vernacular language can bring up a different worldview. And through this excerpt, I also want to explore how do we, what exactly do we mean by parallel which is not mainstream. I shall start by asking a question. Why theatre? Above mentioned question also comes up with following questions. 1, why language? 2nd, why parallel and what is parallel? And 3rd, why empty space? 1, why language? Language is not just a medium of communication, but it is also a medium of perception. We understand things in language. If we don't know what is sexual molestation, and the only feeling that we know for such is fear, we won't realize that someone is committing a crime against us. We would just feel scared. Vis-a-vis, the word depression has become very common lately. If you see the engram image of the word depression, you will see that the word became suddenly popular in 1940s and then lost its popularity for 20 years, and then it is steadily popular around 1960s to today, which means the word was most oftenly used after 1960s, 60s, and that too consistently. From 1940s to till date, people, personally and socially, must have gone through many things, from World War to failures in interpersonal relationships, from Cold War to climate changes, from economic depressions to winning and losing World Cups. But popular word to describe human mind to go through all these phases remains depression. Depression after witnessing a mass killing and depression after losing the World Cup is different. But popularly, because the same word is used, feelings are hampered and actions are affected. There is no need to explain the general insensitivity that the society shows consistently. Having said that, language is also a construct and it has a structure. There are certain terms and theories specific to a certain language. There can be 13 different words for ice in certain language on some part of the world, referring to exact density of ice. And in other languages, any kind of frozen water can be called ice. This basically means each language holds different terms, concepts, and worldview than the other. In global context, English is a mainstream language and Hindi is not. In Indian context, Hindi becomes a mainstream language and Marathi doesn't. Similarly, in the state of Maharashtra, Marathi spoken in Western Maharashtra is considered standard language and Marathi spoken in other parts are categorized as dialects. It is needless to say how each of these languages in the same nation holds different worldviews. They clash, battle, overpower each other. This brings us to the second point. What is parallel and why parallel? Parallel is something which is not mainstream. In the context of this paper, I considered both Marathi language and theatre as parallel. Now, as stated earlier, we can see that there is a parallel to something which is already parallel. The definition of parallel here can be, parallel is something that is parallel to itself. It is not just a wordplay, because when you start discussing the dichotomy of mainstream and parallel, mainstream is something which is more powerful than something which is parallel. The tension of power relation between mainstream and parallel exists. And when you say parallel, you naturally imagine something like mainstream which is more powerful. Now my question is, can two parallels equally powerful exist together? Actually, a geometrical definition of parallel is lines or planes or surfaces side by side and having the same distance continuously between them. And the other definition is things occurring or existing at the same time in a similar way corresponding. Can we imagine this to happen in social structures? Logical extension of idea of parallel in a social context can lead to idea of minorities coexisting with each other without any majority. And extension of the same leads to the ideology of individuality. In the context of language, as one of the elements of formation of the society, can we imagine a social structure of majority of certain minorities, that which is not entirely individualistic? By that I mean, is a society consisting of minorities without a dominant majority through the parallel structures or parallel arts like theatre and regional language achievable? I said in the beginning that my definition of parallel is something which is parallel to parallel. In the context of regional languages and the theatre that we do, the term parallel to itself can be explained as following. Theatre, which is already parallel, Marathi theatre is parallel to the parallel, and Marathi experimental theatre becomes parallel to the parallel to the parallel. Deleuze terms Kafka's literature as minor literature. Deleuze uses a term called deterritorialization of language, which is in short finding a voice within a language that is both alien and familiar. Minor literature means deterritorialization of a major language through a minor literature written in major language from a marginalized or minoritarian position. But the larger question here is the minor has remained really the minor? Which means, does the minority now holds true values of minority? Till now, we were discussing about the regional and linguistic identity called minority, or considering theatre as a non-mainstream parallel activity. But as soon as the concept of money or economy intervenes, minority no longer holds ethics and values of minorities. Experimental theatre productions become very close to commercial theatre productions, which I feel is right now the situation of Marathi experimental theatre. Barring few exceptions, experimental theatre is looked at as a stepping stone to film industry. If not that, it is surely cannot survive on its own. The money which theatre uses for its productions is either industrial money or it is the money that directly comes from film industry. Therefore, you cannot separate yourself totally from mainstream work. Can we imagine any alternatives to this siphoning? It seems unreal. We cannot even imagine a world without the concept of money. Whatever we imagine can be bought by money. Since the value of artwork is predetermined in monetary terms, it has hampered the creative process and curtailed our imagination. What I mean here is when creative becomes a commodity, imagination becomes a commodity too. That's how you can't imagine in its true sense. Here I would like to bring in the third point of this discussion, the empty space. How one has a chance to truly imagine in an empty space. Quoting Peter Brook, I can take any empty space and call it a bare stage. A man walks across this empty space while someone else is watching him. And this is all that is needed for an act of theatre to be engaged. The minimalism, the bareness, the rawness that theatre provides is essential for imagination. The minimalism provides the possibility of abstraction of the spoken word. And that's how spoken word in theatre can become transcendental. Speaking of Marathi theatre per se, 30 Nights, a socio-political history of Marathi theatre, book by Mukran Sathe, interestingly portrays how Marathi theatre has shaped itself from colonial era to post-colonial era. It also portrays how Marathi language comes with a different worldview, separating itself from English, Hindi, and other regional languages, most prominently Bengali and Kannada. It is interesting to see how other regional languages, language theatre, other regional language theatre traditions have commonality and differences with Marathi in theatre. In a global context, Marathi is not mainstream language. Writing and hence writing in Marathi opens a possibility of true imagination, which is radically different from the mainstream, and also sometimes radically questioning the mainstream or the status quo. Thanks.
Thank you, Dharmakirti. I won't speak for long. I would just like to share an experience here because we are talking about insider outsider. Now, as and Vaibhav put it, Marathi theatre is more and more getting restricted to urban areas, that too only Pune and Mumbai. Theatre of other regions or other parts of the state is more or less non-existent or existent only, it springs up only at the time of the state competitions and try to get the awards. Earlier it was not so. I'm one of the few playwrights or writers or group, I belong to a group where we try to go beyond Pune and Mumbai. We do socio-politically conscious plays or political plays. We try to take them at least to smaller towns, if not exactly to the villages. The experience is very different. And it is quite shattering at both the ends many a times. When there was a play of mine which was about the suicides committed by the farmers and the middle classes that are extremely or are desensitized about it. When we performed in a theatre called Prithvi Theatre in Mumbai, which is a very high-end theatre, a small compact theatre, fantastically designed, aesthetically absolutely suited for any play. The play really, as we call in Marathi, Natak Tita Rangta, the play really, the performances normally go extremely well. The refinement of experimental theatre, of cutting-edge experimental theatre, of modern theatre, and etc., all can flourish under such environment. The problem that we faced was that the audiences that come to such theatre, and they come in large numbers, are not interested in the subject that we are dealing with. In fact, my plays are criticizing that audience, and they don't even care about it at all. When we go to smaller towns, and the people who come there to see the plays, maybe the panwala, the rickshawala, the farmer, the carpenter, they are not used to the complexity that we are trying to deal with, the aesthetics that we are trying to evolve to deal with the complex theme. The aesthetics is not aesthetics per se or for aesthetics itself. It is basically the form that the play is delineated in is essential because of the content, because of the complexity of the content that it tries to meet. Unfortunately, these people are not exposed, though they are very close to the theme of the play, they are not exposed either to the complexities of this world in intellectual terms, nor are they exposed to the forms, the newer forms, the theatre of the absurd, etc. So where are we really insiders and where are we exactly outsiders? To bring these two ends together is a very difficult proposition. As I said, again, it is not a bipolar thing anymore, it's a multipolar thing. Marathi theatre, and at least some of us who are dealing or who are trading in the experimental theatre, especially in a socio-political way, are facing these problems. I think Dalits also are quite and well aware of these problems. I won't take more of your time. I thank all the three speakers for finishing their speeches exactly on time. we in Maharashtra are not known for being very polite. And there is a custom in Maharashtra set up by Dr. Lagu that whenever the speaker exceeds the time, music starts on stage. Or we are also used to chairpersons banging on tables to stop the speaker. I did not have to do that. I'm thankful for all three of them. We are open for any questions that you may have.
Anyone can comment on that. In the light of experimental theatre, all the speakers they can comment. Can you comment on queer theatre?
On what theatre?
It is queer theatre.
Queer theatre. Okay.
Yeah, it's an emerging area to look into.
Yeah, queer theatre as a category is recently emerging in the context of Marathi-speaking region, and I can talk about one of the recent plays named Hijra, which was being staged across India over a period of last year, and you may have seen it. So far the queer subjects have been handled. It's not that they were not handled, but here for the first time you have an entire group belonging to a certain queer space, queer sensibility, queer identity, and trying to bring that experiential dimension to the play. Now there is an interesting tension with regard to that play, that the play has a social, realistic, conventional form to it. So formally it belongs to the drawing room setting. But in terms of the actors and the sensibilities those actors bring in, there is a very different energy and impulse. So maybe it'll be interesting to see what kind of aesthetic evolves out of these new voices and energies and impulses which enter Marathi theatre. But yeah, and in fact, one of the actors belonging to that theatre has recently made some interesting comments which can be debatable and controversial. But how do we then relook at Balgandharva and Sangeet Natak history through the lens of the queer theatre and mediated through Satish Adekar's Begum Barvi? So maybe the queerness can open up possibilities of thinking about identities in, as Ira says, in a multilinear way. And also, I mean, this is a point I would like to enforce, that maybe queer is a space which will open up the possibilities of thinking about subjectivity rather than identities. Because identity is a thirst from outside. As we know that the Sanskrit root, idam is not aham. So maybe the paradigm of identity and difference one can bypass, transcend through the queer theatre. Maybe that is a possibility.
Do you keep the matter whether a particular subject will go down well with the audience or not, such type of factors, or do you write whatever you feel strongly on a subject? Are your plays mainly social, or you have written on other issues also?
To answer the first question, the play on the aftermath of the Kashmiri Pandit exodus, it was worked on over a year. The process went on over a year. We met and interviewed many Kashmiri Pandits. We then went to Kashmir. We stayed in Srinagar for a long time with Kashmiri Pandit families that have stayed behind, as well as with Kashmiri Muslim families over there, and interviewed them about what the experience of that exodus has been like, and how their lives have changed post that. So yes, we did meet a lot of people who have lived through the experience before making the play. To answer your second question, most of my Marathi plays actually have been very personal. There was an early play about a girl coming of age who gets her first period and how that changes how she looks at the world. There was the play about a widow who sort of finds life anew, and it's a good thing. She realizes, I mean, she feels as though it's a good thing when her husband dies and he's not been a bad husband or anything. Anyway, so the themes of most of my Marathi plays have actually been very personal and not overtly socio-political at all. But as I was saying, there was a stage when I felt a bit limited and trapped inside that. And in order to figure out what it was that constituted my worldview, if I could begin to even, acquire it, I was attracted towards writers and practitioners and subjects and themes that were outside of my reach within the Marathi space. And so most of those plays have actually not been initiated by me. They have either been commissioned projects that have been, primarily dominated by a research project or a documentation project, or they have been born of conversations with peers, and not from a personal need to explore something. So I'm right now working on a Marathi experimental play, which is sort of a combination of both. So let's see.